Welcome, everyone. It is so incredible to see so many people joining us here this afternoon. As you may know, April is National Financial Literacy Month, and we here at Dallas Habitat are here celebrating all week long with our virtual financial literacy celebration. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Blaine Cower. I am the Vice President of Homeowner Services here at Dallas Area Habitat for Humanity, and we are so excited to welcome you to today's event. We're here today to really help inspire, motivate, and empower you to achieve your financial goals, whatever those goals may be. And if you're joining us for the first time ever, we want to welcome you here today. At Dallas Habitat, we strongly believe that everyone, and we mean everyone, deserves a safe and affordable place to call home. And that truly begins with establishing a strong financial foundation so that we can achieve the dream of homeownership. So today, in today's session, we are welcoming one of our leading financial experts on this topic to lead a discussion with us on how we can make a financial plan that works for us. It is my tremendous pleasure to host today's discussion with a leading financial education expert and somebody that I personally greatly admire, I should also add, Bola Sokunbi, founder and CEO of Clever Girl Finance. Without further ado, please meet Bola.
Hey everyone, this is Bola Sokunbi. I'm the founder and CEO of Clever Girl Finance, and I'm also the author of the Clever Girl Finance book series.
Welcome, Bola. Good morning. Good afternoon, I should say.
Good afternoon. Yes, I am so excited to be here. Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone. We want to say to our attendees before we dig into today's discussion that it is our hope today that this is an interactive, participative discussion. We know that you all have questions on the topics that we're going to dig into with Bola today. So we want to hear from you. Please make sure to make great use out of our chat box in the Zoom meeting today, as well as the Q&A feature. We promise to get to as many of your questions as we can during the presentation. And in fact, we are so encouraging for you all to participate that Bola is kindly gifting a set of her incredible books, which I will say I can personally attest. You can see my bookmarks and my notes in here too, are fantastic and include so many wonderful gems. So if you participate in the chat today, you will be eligible to be in our drawing. We are going to select one winner of somebody who we hear from throughout today's presentation. So don't be shy, y'all. We want to hear from you. Bola, let's kick off today and start with some of the foundational importance of establishing the right mindset as we embark on our financial journeys and really creating a plan that works for us. I know in your books, you talk a lot about the importance of establishing what you call a wealth mindset and getting that mindset in order before we begin setting out on our plan. Why do you think it's so critical that we begin with this step and not skip over it?
Yeah, so when you are on that journey of improving your finances, you're just starting your journey, or maybe you're in the middle of your journey, you sometimes don't know all the answers. You don't know where the money might come from. You don't have the full picture of, how long will it take you to pay off debt or to save a certain amount of money. But what you can control is the way you think about things, right? And so it's really important to have this wealth mindset so that you can basically remind yourself that even though you don't know the answers, even though you don't have all the solutions yet, you are more than capable of achieving the success you desire, as long as you're consistent and as long as you stay motivated. And so that wealth mindset is you telling yourself that I can do this, I can build wealth. And the reason why having that mindset is so important is because when you think positively, you are open to embracing opportunities. Whereas if you're always thinking negatively and thinking about how you can't do things, you will find that opportunities pass you by because you're not motivated to take the action. And so that's why it's so important to have that wealth mindset and remind yourself how capable you are of achieving what you want to accomplish, even if you don't have all the answers right now.
Yeah. I think sometimes we count ourselves out before we even get started, with our negative self-talk, thinking about how big our financial goals are. And so I really appreciate that perspective, that you offer. One of the things too, I know that you talk about quite often, Bola, is, some of these money blocks that we may run into, things that can, really keep us from moving forward with establishing that wealth mindset and achieving our goals. What are some examples of money blocks that we might run into and ways that maybe we can eliminate those?
So money blocks are stuff that we have all experienced. Is those limiting beliefs where we tell ourselves that we cannot do something, no one in our family has done it, none of our friends have done it, we can never do it. It's that negative self-talk. I'm so bad with money, I'm terrible with money, I've made so many mistakes, I can't be successful with my money. It's not having specific goals. So you don't have a goal for what you're saving for, you don't have a goal for investing or paying off debt. And so, that in itself is a block because you have nothing you're aiming towards. It's also the emotions of money, the feeling jealous or envious of what other people have, and that is you extending your energy elsewhere as opposed to focusing on what you need to do. And also holding grudges. Someone did something that caused you to have a money mistake, but you're so focused on this grudge as opposed to taking the lessons from what happened. Also holding on to money mistakes, like not allowing yourself to look past the mistakes that you have made with your money in the past. And then avoiding your finances is a big one. We just don't look at our finances, don't look at the statements because it's so stressful. And then another flip side is people who worship money. That can be a block when you're so obsessed with money that you can't think objectively to make smart decisions. So those are some of the common money blocks that people face when it comes to, their financial wellness journeys.
And we don't have to, have a lot of money or have our financial house in order to be able to change our mindset, right? This is something that I love any of us can do no matter where we are in our financial journey. It's just getting our mindset right. And I see a lot of people in our chat box are resonating with this, right? About the importance of, yes, this is a goal that I have this year, getting my mind in the right place. We see some comments, we've tried this before, and I'm hoping it'll work this time. And we're here to encourage you. This is what this is all about, right? You've got to start somewhere, maybe restart. Nothing's wrong with that, to recommitting to your goal.
Exactly. And, when it comes to mindset and limiting money blocks or, the things that impact you from being able to achieve your money goals, it's really having a strategic plan for your mindset, right? So it's recognizing those thoughts you're having, like when you start to shame yourself or make yourself feel embarrassed, because we do that to ourselves too. Even though other people might do it, we do it to ourselves too. We have to remind ourselves, no shame, no judgment. We have to remind ourselves to appreciate what we have, right? We may not have everything we want, but we have to remember that the things that we have are things that other people are looking for. We're healthy, we're well, we can work, we can go out and pursue our goals. That is a big deal. It's also really important that you open your mind and your heart to embrace change, right? Part of establishing a wealth mindset is doing things differently than how you currently do them now. It's even sometimes getting uncomfortable. So being open to change and then being proactive and actually creating a plan. Because it's one thing to think, I can do it, but then it's another thing to then say, what is the specific action I need to take, right? So it's thought combined with action that will lead to your results. And like I mentioned, getting uncomfortable, getting out of your comfort zone, getting to work, and reminding yourself constantly that you can be successful. And then finally, remembering that money, as amazing as it is, as revered as it is in our society, it is simply a tool. Is a tool that allows you to achieve something you want for yourself, right? It's like a knife. A knife is a tool. It's not good or bad. You can hurt yourself. You can cut your hand with a knife, or you can use it to cut up your vegetables and create an amazing dinner. The same with money. Money is not good and it's not bad. It's a tool that helps you achieve your goals and ultimately live the life that you want, give back to others, create generational wealth, et cetera, et cetera.
That's so important, I think, for us to remember as we establish this mindset is what I hear you saying, Bola, is our money is not an end in and of itself. It's a means to an end, right? Yeah. And sometimes we get that backwards in thinking that the ultimate goal is just accumulating money. We've talked a lot this week about how we can be smart about leveraging that money to achieve our life goals that we have, whether that's sending our kids to college to put them in a better position than we've been in, whether it's planning for retirement to enjoy the later half of our life, right? Whether it's buying a home and creating that generational wealth. And so I think that's incredibly important is just reminding ourselves constantly of the why, and hopefully that will continue to motivate us to move towards some of our financial goals.
Yeah.
Victoria, I see, put in the chat, and I love this. Victoria said, she's been stuck in survival mode for so long. And now, she's been awakened, her child is older, and she's ready to thrive, not just survive. And that's what this is about today, Victoria. We couldn't agree more. And we're going to equip you today. I think, Bola's got some incredible advice on specifically how we're going to develop this plan. So Bola, you said earlier, it's a combination of your mindset and being specific, holding ourselves accountable through this plan. So let's dig into that a little bit. So we know that it's so important for us to establish a financial plan. Can you share with us what, from your perspective, are the necessary components that go into building a solid financial plan so that we can get started?
By the way, I'm loving the chat. So thank you guys so much for sharing, and feel free to drop in the questions as I go over as I answer Blaine's questions. I'm loving the chat. But to come back to your question, Blaine, so when you're thinking about creating a financial plan, you need to have a few things on there. So first of all, you want to make sure you have a budget, which is your plan for your money. You want to make sure you have a plan to pay down debt. You also want to make sure that you have a plan to build and maintain your credit. You also want to have a plan to invest and make sure that you have the right kind of insurance. And within that plan for your budget, you want to also include saving for emergencies. And I think we're going to go over each one of those sections, right?
Yes, ma'am. I was on mute. Yes, ma'am. That's exactly right. Let's dig into each of those 6 different components that you just covered, Bola, in more detail. And we can start with budgeting, right? I think that's like one of the most foundational parts of this.
Yes. So go ahead.
So, well, from my perspective, I think, when we work with families at Habitat, the very first thing we do in every single counseling session is create a budget or a spending plan. I really do think that that's foundational for getting our financial house in order. But we know that sometimes budgeting can feel really overwhelming, especially if we've never done it before. What advice do you have on for us in shifting our mindset with how we think about budgeting?
Yeah, so the first thing to keep in mind when it comes to budgeting is that you are the boss. It is you telling your money what to do and not the other way around. So think about your dollars as your employees in the corporation of you. And you are the CEO and you have hired these employees. Some of them work in advertising and marketing, and they all have their different departments. And you as the CEO are creating the master plan, which is your financial plan, and telling them what to do. Once you have that boss mentality about your money, it makes budgeting less overwhelming. The second thing is your budget is simply a guide. It's not about pursuing perfection here. It's simply a guide that tells you this is how much you have coming in and this is how much you have going out, and what do you need to adjust accordingly so that you can continue to achieve your goals or plan for new goals. If you don't like the name budget, call it something else. So in the chat, you can tell me other alternative names you have for your budget, but you can call it my plan to millionaire status, my pay off debt plan because I'm so amazing. Call it whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to be called a budget, right? And then you want to check in on your budget frequently. And it's important to keep in mind that when you look out for financial advice, you're going to hear all these ideas of different types of budgets, and everybody's going to say, this is the best budget. This is the best budget. The best budget is the budget that works for you. And the budget that works for you is the budget that you're compelled to use and check in with often and make adjustments as needed. So it might be a spreadsheet. It might be a pen and paper. It might be an app. It might be using the cash envelope system. It might be a hybrid of all these different, methods I've mentioned. You might decide to use a percentage-based method. It's all about finding the budgeting process that works best for you. If you don't know what it is, a good place to start is download some free spreadsheets. Go into your smartphone app store and download a bunch of free budgeting apps and start to test them out. You don't like the colors? Delete. Too hard to use? Delete. Doesn't connect to your bank accounts easily? Delete, until you get to that one that works best for you. So you pick what works. The best budget is the one that works for you. And you want to have a boss mentality about that budget because it's you telling your money what to do. You're the boss here, not the other way around.
Listen, people are fired up about this in the chat. Bola, I love
I've
it.
seen the names. I love it. My freedom plan, my wealth plan. This is awesome. Guide to
Said,
thrive.
she named her budget A New Way to Live.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
love that.
yes. I mean, some of this is revolutionary, right? When we think about, so often we talk in our classes at Habitat about, budgeting feeling taboo or, overwhelming or stressful. But what if we have a paradigm shift and we think about how budgeting is your freedom plan, right? Is your ability to unlock your potential to achieve your financial goals and is empowering instead of holding us back.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit, I think we would be remiss to not think about how budgeting plays an even more important role in times like the times that we're in right now. I mean, honestly, we all know no one is immune to the sky high inflation that we're all dealing with right now. When you walk into the grocery store, you go to the gas pump, and we're spending way more than we did 6 months ago or a year ago. Bola, can you share a little bit more with us about why budgeting is even more critical, even more important and essential during financially uncertain times?
Yeah, so during times of uncertainty, which have really been the last couple of years, it's just been one thing on top of the other, the pandemic, global crisis, gas prices, et cetera, et cetera. And during times of uncertainty, it's really important to be more mindful of your dollars because sometimes things can occur outside of your control, right? Life happens, job losses occur. And so this is really a time where you want to look at every dollar and make sure that it truly has a job. And that includes money being put aside for savings, which we will talk about, unplanned circumstances. But, if you are feeling some kind of way about your job, you're not comfortable about your consistent income continuing to come in consistently, then this is the perfect time to focus on prioritizing your core essentials so that you can save money, so that you can build emergency funds, so that you can have that backup money set aside to pay your bills. And your core essentials are essentially your food, your transportation, your housing, your medicines, your core utilities. These are the things that you need to survive day to day. This is not the nice to have, right? Because the nice to have will always be there when you can do that. But this is your core essentials. You also, like I mentioned, want to have that plan for emergency savings, unplanned expenses. And then just, if possible, cut back on that non-essential spending right now. Yes, we all love to go out to dinners and do the fun things, but if you're feeling any kind of way about just the consistency of your income, the reliability of your income, this is a time to cut back on those expenses, focus on saving for emergencies, and prioritize those core essentials until you get to the point where you're feeling more comfortable. And like you mentioned, Blaine, gas prices have really impacted a lot of budgets. My tank used to cost me $60 to fill up. I bought gas recently and it cost me $100. And I was like, what? And so, you may have to readjust other aspects of your budget to accommodate rising costs. So not only gas is more expensive, but food is also more expensive, right? So other areas in your budget that you can shift around to accommodate still being able to feed your family with healthy food. So this is the time to just really be aware of every dollar and where it's going, and make sure that each dollar has a job to do.
That's right. Each dollar has a job to do. I mean, that's noteworthy right there. And that really requires us holding ourselves accountable and not just knowing what our goals are in terms of spending and our expense goals, but also keeping track of those goals. That's where budgeting becomes a living, breathing process and not something that's just a passive process. That's a great takeaway for us. Bola, you mentioned earlier that, as we begin to build our budget or our spending plan, it's really important and critical that we also integrate establishing our emergency fund as part of our budgeting process. At Dallas Habitat, we always say, if you're a Habitat client, give us a shout in the chat. You know this, right? If you take away nothing from our program, we hope that you take with you the mantra to pay yourself first. Yes. Before you pay anyone else, your landlord, your creditors, your bills, pay yourself first. That is the most important foundational thing that we can do for ourselves financially. Bola, if we're just starting out on the process of building our emergency fund, if we're literally starting from scratch in that regard, what are some ways that you think that we can set ourselves up for success in building an emergency fund?
So I just want to preface and say a lot of people don't like the word emergency, right? So again, don't get stuck in names. Don't get caught up in names. you don't like the word emergency fund, call it something else. My backup plan, don't get caught up in the name emergency budget. You just need to have this money set aside. And now more than ever, it is so important. I don't know how close you guys are to following the news, but there is lots of talk about, the US economy heading into a recession, et cetera, et cetera. And so when recessions happens, this also means increased job losses. It also means higher unemployment. It also means goods and services becoming more expensive. So you want to have this emergency savings. And this is essentially a backup plan for you so that you don't derail your other financial goals, and also so that you can minimize taking on debt to resolve an unplanned financial situation. Because what happens is that for many people, because they may not have emergency savings set aside, when something unplanned happens, they end up having to leverage debt and dig themselves deeper into a hole. And, sometimes that's inevitable because some people don't earn enough. But if you're in the position where you have an income right now, you owe it to yourself to put this money aside. And so the first thing you want to do is determine what are your basic living expenses for 6 months. And again, that 6 months sounds like, oh my God, is this woman telling me to save 6 months of my salary? No. Remember, I said basic living expenses. What does it cost you to survive for 6 months? To buy basic groceries, to have shelter, to pay for transportation, to have internet service, to look for a new job. Those core essentials, what is that going to cost you? And when you compare that to your current budget, it's going to look very different because it's not going to have the dinners and the takeouts and the nail salon and the spa and the vacations. This is like survival mode, right? And then what you want to do once you know what that number is, you're going to build it into your budget, right? So every time you get paid, you're going to take X percentage of your paycheck and put it into emergency savings. So let's say, for example, you want to have a $10,000 emergency savings put aside. And you decide that you want to do this over the next 12 months. That means that each month you're going to save $833, right? That does not seem realistic. Maybe you readjust your goal so that it's over 18 months or 24 months. And every time you get paid, you put that money into a bank account. If you get 3 months into it and an unplanned life situation happens, then you tap into that money because that's what it's there for. You build it back into your budget and you start to replenish it again. No unplanned life situation happens, continue to make that savings. You also want to make sure that you're keeping this money accessible and liquid. Emergency savings do not belong in the stock market. They do not belong in a real estate investment because you cannot predict the short-term changes or short-term volatility with those markets. And when you need your money, you need it now, and you want to have the exact amount that you need, that you expect to be in your bank account there. And then also avoid the temptation to spend your emergency savings on non-emergency issues. Like, oh, my friend said, let's go out to dinner. Oh, I want to go on vacation. I'm so tired. That is not what that money is there for. So I always tell people, put it at a different bank that's not linked to your day-to-day checking account. Don't have checks, don't have debit cards for it. If you need the money, you can get it in a matter of driving to the bank or making a phone call for them to mail you a check. So you don't want to spend this money because it's designated for emergencies. But again, it's about starting small. So I would say if you don't have any savings right now, aim to save your first $1,000 to $1,500 because $1,000 to $1,500 can cover your basic emergencies. It can help you replace a water heater. It can help you do a car repair. It can help you buy an emergency plane ticket, right? You want to have that $1,000 as your minimum goal and then start to build up into the 6 months from there.
Yes. Yes to all of that, right? Really, what resonated with me about what you said just now, Bola, putting that money into a different institution that's not easy to tap into. I share often, at Habitat, my own testimony of buying my own house and saving for the upfront cost of home ownership as a first-time home buyer and putting that money into an institution that I literally had to drive to that was not convenient, not close to get money out. And that was one of the most successful tactics for me, was knowing I can't do an automatic transfer. I can't dip into that, and make that too tempting. That money was set aside in a vault, not to be touched for a particular goal. Miss Barbara, I want to call out, Barbara Terry in the chat sent us a note that she has $50 from each paycheck auto drafted. Kudos to you, Ms. Barbara. And I thought, Bola, let's touch on that briefly, the importance of making our savings automatic.
Yes, so automation is a great way to stay consistent and build the habit of savings. I think sometimes as individuals, we get caught up in this whole idea of self-discipline and we punish ourselves by making ourselves do manual things in the pursuit of self-discipline. But sometimes this discipline can be aided, and it can be aided with automation, which makes it simple, right? So when you automate your transfer to savings, your transfer to your investment accounts, that's one less mental debate you have to have with yourself when you get paid. You don't have to say, oh, should I save? I'll save later. I want to go to dinner. The money's already gone to savings. It's not a mental debate you need to have. So automation can help you save consistently over time. And studies show that when you automate your savings, people who automate save more on average than people who don't, because there's less time for that mental debate. Because usually your mind is going to win. No, it's going to tell you, hey, girl, you pay that back later. Let's just take that $100 and go to dinner. Or I'm so stressed out. I need a massage. Take the money, you pay back later, and you never pay it back.
Right. This is so true. Exactly. So make that automatic, set it to the side, don't touch it. I love that. And I see some notes from our attendees coming in who absolutely agree with that. Okay, Bola. So let's transition. Step number 3. We've talked about budgeting. We've talked about establishing a emergency fund.
Yes.
But another really critical component of our financial plan is getting our debt in order, right? And many of us have some amount of debt. Today's theme, every day this week in our event has a theme, and today's theme is conquering credit and paying down debt. So this is very on theme for us today. And, okay, my first question to you, Bola, debt, good thing or a bad thing?
I'm not a fan of debt, but again, debt is also a tool. It can be a good tool or a terrible tool, right? Debt can be useful to building wealth, especially when you look at how wealth is leveraged in business or real estate, using other people's money to build assets. So when debt is associated to assets and wealth building, then it can make sense. But again, it's all about doing your research, knowing your numbers. But the average debt that people have that's associated to things that have long been used or eaten or enjoyed in the past is not a good thing, because now you're paying high interest for memories that you may not even have, right? Student loan debt is a little different because it's tied to your education, but it's still incredibly expensive, especially when you think about the compounding interest. So debt is a tool, and it's all about how you leverage this tool for your betterment, right? So you get student loans to get a good job, to help you pay down this debt, but then have a long-term career that can help you build wealth over the course of your life. Or you leverage debt to purchase real estate where you have rental property, or to build a business, etc. But when you're leveraging debt to buy dresses and pay for vacations, then it's not worth it.
I couldn't agree more, right? And so it is a tool, like you said. Think about, for our attendees, one version of debt is a mortgage loan, right? Yes. Many of us don't have $250,000, $300,000 sitting in a bank to be able to buy in cash. And so that's not bad necessarily, is, getting financing to purchase a house. But it really depends on the type of debt, the amount of debt, and certainly, to Bola's point, the interest rate. Interest rate on home financing, especially nowadays, might be somewhere between 3 and 4%. Versus a credit card, you're looking at a lot of times upwards of 20% interest. Yes. That's 2 very different kinds of debt, right?
Yeah, 2 very different kinds of debt, right? It makes sense to take the mortgage at that low interest rate, and you have this asset, which is a home that you can either sell in the future or pass on, and you build equity in it. So that's where it makes sense to leverage debt to build wealth or build an asset versus, debt for stuff that doesn't matter.
Yes. One of the things is oftentimes we find that, when we do have a large amount of consumer debt, kind of like we talked earlier about with our budgeting, it can feel really overwhelming. We might feel just completely burdened by the amount of debt and not really sure, where to start in tackling how we pay down some of that debt and getting ourselves in a healthier financial position. Bola, this is something I know as a huge fan of Clever Girl Finance and your channels. You talk with experts all the time who don't just know how to do this, they've done this personally. You've done this personally, right? Paying down an amount of debt that others might look at and say, there's no way, that feels completely impossible to do. What are some simple steps to get started if we're just feeling overwhelmed by the sheer amount of debt that we have?
Yeah, so I know that looking at a debt balance can be very stressful, but one challenge I want to give to folks watching is to try to take the emotion away from your debt and instead look at it objectively. You are trying to reduce numbers, right? That's the idea. And so, first of all, you want to decide that you are done with this debt, especially when it comes to credit card debt, which is high interest debt that's not associated to any assets, that's on a revolving basis. You want to decide you're done with this, which means you're not going to be using those credit cards unless you absolutely have to, right? You lose your job, you have an emergency savings, you need to buy groceries, fine, use the credit card, create a plan to pay it down. But if you don't need to use this credit card, please decide you are done with it forever. And then you want to create a plan to now tackle the debt. The challenge with debt is not the principal balance, right? Because if you owed $1,000 and you owed $1,000 for the next 10 years, every time you made a payment, you would see that balance go down. The challenge is with compounding interest. This is basically, you have a hole that is your debt and you're trying to use a spoon to fill it up with your minimum payments, but the interest is like an automatic shovel that every time you put a spoonful of dirt in the hole, it digs out a whole big chunk right out, right? Automatically. And so that's what interest is. And so your goal is to get ahead of the interest. So you create a plan and list out all of the debts that you owe and decide, okay, I'm going to prioritize this top debt. And you're either going to prioritize your debt by the smallest balance or the highest interest rates. Prioritizing by the highest interest rate will save you the most amount of money because you're targeting that most expensive debt first. But the bottom line key here is for the debts that you prioritize, you want to pay more than the minimum payments. By design, your credit card companies, your lenders, they want you to make minimum payments because they make money on interest that's compounded on your principal balance. And when you make minimum payments, it allows them to earn the full amount that is legally allowable on that interest compounding or whatever interest rate it is. So you want to pay more than the minimum because every dollar you pay more than the minimum payment is money that will go directly to your principal balance that will reduce how much of it is being compounded with that interest rate each time, each month or each week, or depending on your compounding rate or compounding process. It'll minimize how much is getting compounded by interest every single time. So, and then you start to make those payments. You make the minimum make the minimum payments on your less priority debts, but on your top priority debt, your number one debt, the highest debt, you make the minimum payment and then as much more as you can afford than that minimum. Once that debt is gone, you take all that money and you roll it into your next priority debt. And this over time will help you see progress. The key here is paying more than the minimum to your top priority debts. You have debt that's out of control in collections, pick up your phone, call your collections agency, negotiate a payment plan. The worst thing they can say to you is no, but usually they want to get their money back. And so they will work with you to create a plan.
That's completely right. We see this all the time in homeownership counseling at Dallas Habitat. So many of our clients come to us feeling really overwhelmed by this and are really genuinely surprised when they reach out to creditors to be able to negotiate payment plans, how eager those companies are to be able to structure those to help consumers being able to pay that balance off. So just know that. I love that. I'm seeing some really great comments in the chat about this. And again, back to this theme about, so much of the time, our relationship with money can be saddled with that shame and that guilt. So, Bola dropped a gem earlier, right, about disassociating ourselves from some of those feelings of perhaps shame and guilt, and remembering to look at something like our debt objectively. These are just numbers. They do not define us. They have nothing to do with our ability to create financial freedom. That starts with our mindset, for sure. Bola, I want to dig into a specific kind of debt that we have so many questions about because so many of us consumers these days have this kind of debt and maybe saddled with this kind of debt. Student loans. Mm-hmm. A hot topic right now. Of course, we're seeing a lot of the deferment taking place as a result of some of the legislation that's come through related to COVID. Again, what we saw here just this week, again, this was extended to later this year. For those of us who have student loan debt, though, what are some strategies that we should be keeping in mind for how to chip away at that debt and pay that off quickly? Again, looking at some of these balances that can seem really insurmountable.
Yeah, so, student loans are, when they're presented to you or you sign your loan, they're given to you similar to a mortgage, where if you go back and you look at your student loan documentation, you likely have an amortization schedule. And this is just basically the life cycle of your loan. It's telling you how much you're going to pay for the next 10, 20, 30 years for this loan until it's gone. And a lot of people just accept that with a student loan that, you know what, I'm just going to pay this loan for 30 years. But it doesn't have to be that way. A student loan, even though it seems large, is debt that you can actually get ahead of if you focus on making more than the minimum payments. It's very important that if you have student loans, that you are aware of all your loans. I know women who in college signed a student loan every semester. And so they had 9 different loans, for example, upon graduation, and they had no idea where these loans were. So you want to be aware of all your loans. If you're not sure, pull a copy of your credit report. You are entitled to a free credit report from annualcreditreport.org. And you can, or .com, sorry, you can pull your credit report and just see all the loans associated to your name. You want to factor your loan payments into your budget. If for whatever reason you have private loans that are at a higher interest rate, you want to consider consolidating your loans into a lower rate. If your federal loans are at a higher rate and you can qualify for a lower rate, that might be something you want to consider. But you also want to keep in mind that when you are doing loan consolidation with your student loans, even though you're saving money on the interest rate, right, which can be very significant, can be tens of thousands of dollars depending on how much you owe, you may lose certain benefits like income-based repayment plans, right? But one thing to keep in mind about income-based repayment plans is that they're typically designed to keep you paying the minimum amounts that you can afford on that debt, which keeps you in the life cycle of the loan for the maximum amount of time legally allowable, so that the servicer, your loan servicer, maximizes how much money they earn on your loan from interest. So if you do not need an income-based repayment plan and you can afford to pay more, there's no reason for you not to do that consolidation. If you are in a position where you've lost your job, you can't make your payments, don't default, don't skip loan payments, like don't do nothing. Instead, pick up your phone and call your loan servicer and say, hey, listen, I've lost my job. Do you have a plan? Can you help me? Can you defer payments? Many of them will work with you without making negative remarks to your credit because they want their money. And many servicers, loan providers, as a result of the pandemic and, different situations that have occurred as a result, have so many plans in place to help you. When it comes to paying off your student loans, again, create a prioritization like we talked about. Organize your loans by priority and focus on paying more than the minimum to that top priority debt. And one thing very, very important with student loans is that because they're structured in this amortization schedule where you know how much you're going to pay every month for the life of this loan, it's not a revolving credit card. You want to make sure that when you make an extra payment, that this payment is designated to your principal balance. It's either you select that on the website, right? Or you pick up your phone to confirm. Otherwise, what can happen is that they will assume that you're making an advance payment on interest. So many times people will be making extra payments that are going straight to interest, and they're wondering why their principal balance never goes down. It's because the student loan servicer is saying, well, she's making extra payments. It means she wants to give us more interest, her interest ahead of time because she's staying in this schedule. So every extra dollar you put towards your student loan, you want to make sure that it's going towards your principal balance. You need to confirm that. Very important.
So important. Absolutely. And we have some great questions coming in on student loans. We'll hold those until the end for our Q&A session, but continue, please, attendees, to send your questions in, and we'll get to as many of these as we can today. Bola, one more quick question on debt before we move on to credit. And that is, again, back to some, dealing with debt during uncertain times. How do you think that we should manage our debt differently if we come across something like a job loss or, like many of us experienced at the beginning of the pandemic with so much financial uncertainty? How should we look at our debt differently in times like that?
Yeah, so during uncertain times, during a job loss, during, a pandemic, you switch to survival mode, right? And at this point, your survival mode means being able to have safe shelter, being able to feed your family, being able to have those medicines that you need, being able to have water, survival mode. And so if that means you need to prioritize saving for emergencies so that you can cover those expenses versus paying off debt, then it might mean that for a few months while you save for emergencies because of the uncertainty you're feeling, that you just make your minimum payments to your debt and you're okay, right? It means that if you've lost your job, because you need to put food on the table and you only have a limited amount of money available, you pick up your phone and call your creditors and say, listen, I lost my job. I can only afford to buy groceries right now. Can you help me? You can very well ramp back up into an accelerated debt repayment plan once you feel steady on your feet, once you have the job again, once your income is steady again. So that's perfectly fine. But if you are uncertain at this point, you've lost a job, minimum payments, or call your creditors and tell them you need help. What can they do so that you can focus on survival mode? And again, don't assume that your credit card company or student loan company knows that you've lost your job, knows that you're facing financial hardship. They do not know unless you tell them, and they do not care either unless you tell them. So that's very important.
So important. Yeah. We talked a lot about this during the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the importance of communicating with your creditors and letting them know, making them aware. So we've talked about 4 of the 6 steps so far. Just to recap for our attendees, so making good progress on our financial plan. The 5th component of our financial plan is credit. Yeah. So, related to debt, but a little different as well when we look at our credit kind of more holistically than just the debt that we owe. As we embark on our journey to create our financial plan, Bola, I wonder, what are the most impactful ways that we can either maintain or rebuild our credit?
Yeah, so I just want to preface about credit because I want people to think about credit a certain way. The word credit is funny because you actually do not get any credits, right? With credit, you get debt. It's not a prize. It's simply a tool, right? There's no prize for good credit. The prize you get is debt, but it's a tool that can allow you to achieve certain goals, like owning an asset, like a home, building, a business, like a real estate business or other business, by taking on loans to buy property, etc. It can be leveraged to help you use other people's money to build wealth, to achieve some of your goals. Buying a home, credit is necessary in terms of, many companies or services don't take cash. You need to have some sort of credit payment. It offers protection services, to rent an apartment, to get a phone. Many people need to look at your credit. Even employers now, some of them are looking at credit. So it's something you need to have, because to employers, to creditors, it shows just your responsibility with paying back debt, with paying your bills. And so when it comes to maintaining your credit or building your credit, number 1, check your credit report, know what is on there. 1 in 3 credit reports has an error on them, believe it or not. It could be as simple as a wrong address, a misspelled name, to as crazy as an extra zeros or a couple of zeros at the end of your debt balance, right? So you want to know what's on your credit report. Pay your bills on time, right? Especially bills that are associated to debt. So your student loans, your credit cards, pay them on time every month. If you have a credit card, aim to pay it in full. So build your credit card spending into your budget so you can pay it in full. Bills, when you pay them, don't typically get reported to your credit unless you do not pay. So when you do not pay your water bill, you do not pay the medical bill, you do not pay those type of utility bills, they will get reported. So pay your bills on time. If you're behind on payments, you cannot make a payment. Again, pick up your phone, call your creditor, ask for help. If your credit card or your information, your social security number, or any of your private information is stolen, report the theft to the credit bureaus. Identity theft is it's crazy right now, right? And what's crazy about the people who do identity theft is that they don't leverage your information immediately. I think the average time is about 5 years later, is when you have long forgotten about the fact that you were a victim, is when they will now pull out your information and use it for some sort of credit fraud. And if your credit report has errors, contact the bureaus in writing, right? To have them correct the address, the wrong balance, the misspelled name. But with credit, it's all about keeping your balances low, not applying for credit you don't need, and leveraging credit for things that make sense, like for business and like for purchasing a home. Those are the areas that you can leverage credit for positive reasons.
Absolutely. So huge takeaway here, pay your bills on time. 35% of your credit score is dictated by whether or not you pay your bills on time. So it's the easiest way to be able to move that needle really quickly, especially if you have a short-term financial goal that you're looking to boost your credit score for. And then Bola, you've mentioned a couple of times now about annualcreditreport.com, which is a phenomenal resource. A lot of people may not realize you can pull your credit for free from each of the 3 credit bureaus, typically annually. But I will say during the COVID-19 pandemic, which like it or not, we are still in the midst of, we have not yet exited, right? They have recognized this and actually are allowing consumers to pull our credit reports for free once a month now. So please take advantage of this and make sure that, you check out that website. We've dropped the link in the chat.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was just going to say that, the 2 key things you want to keep in mind are that you want to pay your bills on time, right? Your payment history is a big deal, like you said, 35%, but also your utilization. And this is how much of your available balance you're using. This is a big percentage of your score as well. I think it's about 30%. And this just shows how desperate are you for this debt in terms of how much of your available balance have you used. If you have maxed out all your credit cards and you're trying to apply for a mortgage, you look like a higher risk to your mortgage lender. And that's where you have your mortgage broker telling you, listen, let's try to pay off these credit card bills, get these things down so that you can improve that debt to credit utilization ratio. So if you have a credit card, your key should be to bringing down that balance so that you can improve your score.
Love that. So remember, utilization, like Bola said, under 30% of our credit limit. So knowing what your credit limit is, make sure you're keeping up with that as well, so you can watch your utilization limits on that. Okay, our final component of our financial plan, and this is, we would be completely remiss to not mention this. This is my favorite topic again. My shameless plug for your book, Bola. But this really and truly, I want our attendees to know, all of Bola's books are fantastic, but in particular, Grow Your Money, which focuses on investing, specifically for women, PS, is an incredible guide to be able to really set out on that journey if investing, hands-on investing is new for you. And so I love this topic so much. I really feel like this is an area of financial planning, honestly, Bola, that often gets overlooked. We're so laser focused a lot of times on our budgets or on our credit and on our debt that we're really not maximizing our ability to save for our future financial goals. And, I know that many of us might be familiar with saving in the form of perhaps like a 401k for our retirement, but what are some other avenues that are also worth considering when we think about saving for the future?
Yeah, so investing, when you think about it, is essentially your money working for you. This is how you grow your money. This is how you build wealth. You think about the wealthiest people, the most successful people financially, they build their wealth through investing. And this is simply because as individuals, we only have so much time that we can exchange for income, right? There's a cap there. Right? But with investing, your money is out there working for you and growing through the power of compounding, appreciation, and dividends, which means that the potential growth of your money, if you consistently invest, can be exponential. This is how real wealth is built. And like you mentioned, there are different ways to invest. So you can invest traditionally, which is very common, the lowest barrier to entry, which is in the stock market, by buying stocks, funds, bonds, leveraging a 401k, a 403b, an IRA, a Roth, or even investing in a non-retirement account like a brokerage account. So the stock market is one avenue to invest. It is the lowest barrier to entry because you don't need a lot of money to get started, right? Many brokerages now, you don't even need a single dollar to open the account, and you can start investing with as little as $5 or $10. Another way to invest is in real estate with rental property, commercial property, farmland, resorts, and hospitality properties. There's so many different ways to invest in real estate. There are even options to invest in real estate funds through the stock market. The third way to invest is through small business, investing in your own business or in the business of other people after you have done your research, you have worked the numbers, it makes sense for you. And then the fourth way, which is becoming more popular, but is higher risk, much higher risk, is through digital currencies and assets like cryptocurrency and NFTs. And so when you look at successful people in the world, they usually have a mix of all of these: stock market, real estate, small business, and maybe some digital currencies. So start with the one that has the lowest barrier to entry. Your employer offers a 401k that has a match, take it, right? That's the easiest way to earn free money immediately and then have your money grow for you. If you're interested in real estate, start to do your research and understand about cash flow and about appreciation and depreciation. You're interested in small business, start to do your research and understand, the industry and the niche of small business. And the same would also apply to digital currencies and assets. Start to understand how that space works as well.
Yes. Yes, to all of that. I love it. And so don't be intimidated by investing. We absolutely can do it. To Bola's point, there are simpler ways to do that. And then we grow our confidence and grow our skill sets as we get more financially savvy as we go. And Bola, I don't want to skip over one really important part of the financial plan that you've laid out too, which is how we protect our money long-term and insurance. What are some forms of insurance that we should make sure that we have to protect our money?
Yes. So if you are working and your employer offers health insurance, take it, and don't just take the cheapest, take the one that's best suited to your needs or your dependent needs. The same applies to auto insurance. It is mandatory, but again, don't just take the cheapest one. You have a young driver in your home, you want to consider that and get better insurance. You own a home. When you purchase a home, you're required to have homeowners insurance, but your mortgage company is not making sure that you maintain it. I cannot tell you how many times people allow their homeowners insurance to lapse and then something happens. So you want to have homeowners insurance. You're renting your apartment. Your landlord's insurance does not cover your personal property. You want to have renters insurance. It is extremely cheap. It's between $10 and $20. I know some apartments require you to have it now, but several don't, especially if you're renting from a friend or family member or an individual. Other insurance you want to consider are life insurance if you have dependents, disability insurance, again, you have dependents that rely on your income, personal property if you have expensive jewelry, electronics, etc., home warranties that protect the systems in your home, your plumbing system, your electrical system, your heating system, air conditioning. And then if you have a business, you definitely want to have business insurance and liability insurance as well. And essentially, insurance is your backup plan. It prevents you having to derail your whole financial plan because the insurance will cover that expense.
Right. For, really for unforeseen catastrophic events that can happen and do happen every day. And I will say, Clever Girl Finance, we've dropped the link to that website in the chat multiple times. Make sure that you check out these resources that are free and available to everyone. And Dallas Habitat also offers, free financial online education through our PocketWise platform. We'll drop the link to that platform in the chat as well. Check these resources out, y'all, to dig deeper into a lot of what we discussed today, all of those 6 components that Bola just ran through. Bola, we have some great questions from the audience that I'd love for us to dig into now. So many good questions that have come in. So the first question that I want to pitch to you is from Sabrina. And I love this question. Sabrina, we talked earlier about paying yourself first in the context of an emergency fund. Sabrina's question is, other than establishing emergency funds, what are some other or alternative ways that we can pay ourselves first?
So I'm a huge fan of paying yourself first by investing, because this is you putting your money to work. And so the easiest way, if your employer offers a 401k, a 403, a IRA, take advantage of it. This money gets pulled from your paycheck before it hits your bank account, and that is the ultimate pay yourself first. Your employer does not offer one. You can open your own IRA, right? In 2022, I believe the contribution max is $6,000. And you can just automate it where each time you're getting paid, the money just comes out and goes to your IRA account. So investing is the ultimate way to pay yourself first, because not only do you pay yourself, then you've also told your money, I paid myself first. Now it's time for you to go out and work and compound and appreciate and earn me dividends.
Yes. I love that. Great question, Sabrina. Thank you so much for sending that in. Our next question comes from La Tienda, who said, I took out a 401k loan to pay off debt, and now I have to pay off an additional $12,500 because of taking out that 401k loan. What books about mindset shifts do you recommend so that I can change for the better?
Well, definitely check out the Clever Girl Finance books. I talk about mindset, but also we have a course on mindset about building the right foundation that will help you. For anyone who's thinking about 401k loans or withdrawals, I don't recommend them because of the penalties associated with them. When you factor in, sometimes you might be allured by the low interest rates, but when you factor in the penalty and also the lost opportunity for your money to be in the market working for you, compounding, appreciating, and earning dividends, it costs much, much more than the interest rate on that debt that you are trying to pay. So, but that has happened. The mistake has happened, right? We're not crying over spilt milk. Instead, we're learning the lessons and we're moving forward to take action. So definitely check out Clever Girl Finance. We have that free personal finance course on mindset development. And we have tons of mindset articles on our website. And also check out the first Clever Girl Finance book as well, called Clever Girl Finance.
Love it. Yes, yes, yes. Of course, your books dig into this. This is why we've invited Bola here today, because she is the expert, y'all, on this. So leverage these resources. Bola, our next question is regarding student loans. And the question says, in the UK, student loans are actually written off after 30 years. Is it the same here in the US?
No, they don't get written off. I mean, occasionally there is the forgiveness, which I personally don't know anybody who has had their loans forgiven. So I would say the rules are so strict. I know someone who had thought their loans were going to be forgiven after 10 years, but then they did not qualify because something happened. So it doesn't get written off. I know in the news also recently, one of the big student loan providers is forgiving 10,000 loans, but it doesn't get dismissed. So the key is, how do I get ahead of these loans? How do I get ahead of the interest? Creating your plan to pay more than the minimum, making sure that it's hitting your principal balance, that more than the minimum payment you're making, and just focus on getting those loans out of your life. And sometimes it takes time, but it is worth it, right? It's a long journey, but it is worth it.
Okay, here's our final question that I want to pitch to you. This question is about budgeting. And I really particularly like this question because it looks at budgeting more holistically. When we're budgeting for a family, not just ourselves, what do we need to take into consideration?
That's a great question, right? So budgeting for a family, you need to take into consideration all the income sources, right? So do you have a partner or a grown child that's working, that's part of your household? What are all the income sources? And then you also want to factor in everybody's expenses, right? Are you paying for daycare? Are you paying for soccer cleats? Are you paying for a school trip? What are you paying for that's beyond yourself? And listing all of these expenses, right? How your grocery bill expands, and then comparing it with all the different income sources you have, right? Your key is to keep your expenses, your total expenses for your whole family underneath the income that your whole family is bringing in. And your goal is to widen the gap between your income and your expenses, because this gap here, all this fun stuff here, is money you can put towards savings, paying off debts, and having a good time with your life, your family vacations, etc. So consider all of the income streams and consider all of the expenses. Don't just plan your own expenses, right? What's coming up in the future? You're going to have to get a babysitter. You're going to have to hire a nanny. Your kid is moving to a new school. It means you're going to be driving 10 miles further, which means more gas. You want to factor in all those expenses associated to other people in your household as well.
Love that. So factoring in all of the income, all of the expenses, and then all of our goals, right? As a family, we have goals. Sometimes as a family unit as well. I love that advice. Bola, this has been amazing. I have absolutely loved having you for this conversation today. I'm just personally so humbled and thankful for you to take the time to join us today. To our attendees, I have to give y'all a huge shout out. You guys have been so active and so participative in the chat. We love all the questions. Any questions that we didn't get to, we promise we can answer those. We're going to send in the chat a link to an email that you can reach my team at Dallas Habitat with any follow-up questions that we can support you with. So do not hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for. And speaking of being active in the chat, we promised at the beginning for one active participant that we would do a giveaway of a set of Bola's books. So drum roll, please. We have our winner, who is Raquel Russell George. Yay, Raquel. Congratulations. Raquel, we will reach out to you via email to make sure we can get Bola's books to you. Congrats to you. Congrats to all of our attendees who took the time on your lunch break or your lunch hour to join us here today. This time hopefully was well spent for you, and we certainly hope that you've learned so much and feel empowered to go about the journey of building out your own financial plan. Bola, any final remarks you'd like to share with our attendees?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. The time flew by. And I just want to encourage everyone that, the world is going through difficult times right now, but you are here, you're healthy, you were able to tune in. Don't take what you have for granted and just stay motivated. You can achieve your goals. It might take time, it might be uncomfortable, but it is 100% worth it. So thank you so much to Dallas Habitat, and Blaine, to you and everyone else who supported this organization of this event. I appreciate it. I'm very grateful to have been here.